Hello! Here I am in my locker room about to read a bedtime story to one of my favourite Australian rowers. She's heading to the next Olympic Games. I coached her mother, and her father was a great swimmer too. Great human beings, great people. And now the daughter is trying to make the Australian Olympic team. Seeing she's a rower, I thought I'd read the story about David Crawshay and Scotty Brennan. I've sent you this book, love, but I want to read you the story because the story is so powerful. Journey to Gold. Rowing is a tough, you're in it, a tough, relentless sport physically. It can break bodies, it can break spirits, or the devastation of defeat can inspire incredible justice and retribution in the most inspiring way. This story about David Crawshay and Scotty Brennan is such a story. Come with me on a remarkable journey that starts at the home of modern Olympics in Greece. The year's 2004, quite some time ago. The venue is Lake Chineus, a rowing course especially designed and prepared for the Athens Olympic Games. There's a hush in the huge grandstand that sits like some giant colossus casting huge shadows over the finish line. The Australian supporters are nervous and expectant. I was there with them. It was an amazing feeling. They wait for the regatta to start. Races that will determine rowing finals. These finals will then determine who will get the chance to realise their Olympic dream and actually bow their head and get that precious Olympic medal. The Australian rowing four row past. Their oars cut a rhythmical sway through the glassy waters of Lake Chineus as they stroke rhythmically to the start line. 4 young men's hearts are beating, expectant. Their minds are crowded with burning desire and ambition to be crowned Olympic champions. The young men sit high in the boat, their backs are straight. Their time has come, just as yours will. The countless hours of training is about to be realised. These 4 superbly fit, sun-tanned young Australian men sit upright. They're quietly confident. Why wouldn't they be confident? 2 weeks earlier at their final trial in Lucerne, against the best rowing teams in the world, they blitzed the field and won the trial by 2 boat lengths. They're the favourites. But I'll tell you something. Sport is a great leveller and often strikes unexpectedly. These 4 young men failed to qualify for the final on Lake Chineus, and instead they watch it from the grandstand. I want you to make the team, and I don't want you to be watching the final from the grandstand. Who were these 4 young men? And what would their future hold? Duncan Free, David Crawshay, Scotty Brennan. They became battle-hardened from their defeats. And Sean Colton, the 4th member, retired from the sport after his only Olympic Games, but still a great Australian Olympian. Let's fast forward now. Spin the time forward. And now, Shunyi Olympic Rowing Canoe Park. This is the venue built for the Beijing Olympic Games. It's located close to the Mapo village in the Shunyi district of Beijing, where amazingly, 3 of these 4 young men I just told you about would become Olympic gold medalists. Duncan Free's partner Goin, an absolute legend, would also become Olympic gold medalist. But more about Goin later on. Let's just concentrate on Scotty Brennan and David Crawshay. When they won, I wanted to find out how it happened and what they did. So I went and chased down their coach, Rhett Ayliffe, and I said, "Hey Rhett, come in here. I want to talk to you about the rowing successes that's been in Beijing, particularly your two boys." "Sure, Laurie, where do you want to start? Who are the stars?" Well, he went on and he told me all about that, but I was only interested in the two boys that he coached. And I said, "I'm interested in your gold medal boys. I want to hear straight from the horse's mouth, what did they do after the bitter disappointment on Lake Chineas in 2004? Well, Laurie, the journey from Athens to Beijing to win the gold medal was amazing. And I do think that the pain of losing when they were strong favourites to win in Athens helped motivate them and keep them focused on this journey. You know, for me, I just love hearing different success stories and what successful athletes do to get to the top. And these stories can become a great motivators and influence many young swimmers that I coached at different times. Great motivators. So I said to Rhett, "Come on, tell me. My understanding is that the quad that got 7th didn't make the final and were bitterly disappointed in Athens, and your two boys finished up gold medals 4 years later." "That's true," he observed. "You coached two of them in the pair, and I'm interested in that journey." I wanted to know more about it. "Laurie, we need to go back 4 years. That quad won in Lucerne by 2 boat lengths. They had a boat length of clear water. In rowing, this is a huge lead. Lucerne, as you know, is a major lead-up regatta going into the Olympics. In most instances, Lucerne is a great guide to who will be on the Olympic podium." They thought they'd be on the Olympic podium. Unfortunately, that Athens Olympic quad that had promised so much underperformed on the pressure of Olympic expectations. They came 7th, missed the final, and sat in the grandstand. Scotty Brennan and David Crawshay, my two boys that I coached, were devastated by it. Devastated. Now, young lady, with your training and your journey to Paris, leave no stone unturned. This is a long story. The boys are quite diverse characters. Scotty Brennan went full on into medicine for 2 years. You're kidding me. He did medicine and Olympic gold in the same time. He rowed, but he really felt the system had let him down, had some issues with coaches and didn't represent Australia. In fact, he wanted to go to the World Championships as the single scull in 2006, 2 years later, because he felt that he'd be in charge of his own destiny. You've got to be in charge of your own destiny too, kiddo. Don't forget that. Very single-minded, I observed. Yes, he's highly intelligent and is a real student of rowing. He'd make a great coach. He loves analysing technique and looking at the best ways to apply pressure to the blade. He was always questioning best ways to release the blade after holding onto water for as long as possible. He seriously questioned and searched for ways to get maximum boat speed and maximum distance per stroke. 2 things. How good is it when your athlete listens? How good is it when your athlete buys into the program and becomes partly responsible for their own destiny? You, young lady, have to be responsible for your destiny. It's in your hands. Your mother and your father, both Australian representatives, will give you all the support you need. But you basically are the one who's responsible. He just didn't want to rely on 3 other people in the boat, so he wanted to do it by himself. If he failed, he'd accept defeat. His concern was, if he failed, he wanted to be responsible for that failure and not put the blame on someone else. Me then, and I'm going to recite it, I thought of Rudyard Kipling's great poem, If. So, I'm going to bore you with a poem, honey. If you can keep your head when all about you're losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired of waiting or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. Don't puff yourself up, in other words. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those 2 impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch things you gave your life to broken, if you can stoop and build them up with worn-out tools, if you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss and lose and start again at your beginnings. Start again at your beginnings and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they're gone, and soul, hold on, where's nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings and not lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, I'll say it again, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, you care about everyone, but none too much, if you can fill that unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it. And, which is more, you'll be a man, my son. Well, because it's for you, I should have said, you'll be a woman, my girl. Well, he was in rowing wilderness for 2 years. He rowed a little bit but didn't represent. But the partnership, the pairs, how did that come about? I wanted to know about these 2, Crawshay and Brennan. I wanted to know about them. How did they win the Olympic gold medal? Why did they win it? And why? It's funny how things happen. In 2007, Crawshay put forward to his case, Crawshay wanted to row with Scotty Brennan, a Tasmanian, in the Australian senior double scull. And I said, why choose Scott, who wasn't even rowing seriously? This is it. He saw his partner. Crawshay saw Scott Brennan as a winner, and he wanted to row with the winner. Crawshay had been overseas with high expectations so many times, but was seriously disappointed time and time and time again. Disappointed? I wanted to know why. You have to understand that Crawshay is a physiological unit who could outrow anyone on machines in the gym. His VO2 max and other laboratory tests were miles above average. So he was a physiological, a stud. He astounded sports scientists from Australian Institute of Sport. He could pull an ergo in a gym like no other. 400 watts at 4 millimole blood lactate. Amazing. Amazing. So every time he went overseas, he expected results. Every time he left Australian shores, he had high expectations. And Rhett Aliff said to me, Laurie, he's a specimen. He's a specimen with high expectations, and he wanted someone to complement his strengths. What's your partner like? Is she going to complement your strengths? Because you've got to work together. You need a top team. And that's why I've chosen this story to read to you at Christmas time to help you along your journey. The selectors asked Crawshay who wanted to be his partner in the pairs for the World Championships in 2007. He chose Scott, despite the fact that Scott was still doing medicine. I can't believe this. Brennan, amazing. The reason he said was, Scott's a winner, and I want to row with a winner. I've got a monkey on my back, and I haven't been out of a B final since 2003. I need to row with a winner. He thought he could do the job with Scott Brennan, I thought. Yes, Craws loved rowing. He rowed full on, but he craved international success. He felt he had a monkey on his back with too many international rowing failures, and he wanted to get this monkey off his back. So his physiology said winner, but every time he competed overseas, there's a problem, I thought. Rhett went on, you're right. You see, there were some real serious drivers based on that 2004 Athens disappointment and the fact that his overseas efforts were not bringing him, not bringing Crawshay, the successes he craved. And what about Scott? Did he want to row with Crawshay, I asked. Well, the selectors put them together. Craws got his wish, and they commenced their 2008 Olympic campaign. Did they have immediate success, I asked. They raced at 2 World Rowing Cups in Europe, 2007, and then the 2007 World Rowing Championships in Munich, where they placed 8th. So it wasn't a real auspicious start. No, they weren't disappointed. There was some light at the end of the tunnel. They won bronze in the 2008 World Rowing Championships in Munich and again in Lucerne before their successful run for gold at Beijing 2008. Do you notice I've gone out of my way to wear my Beijing shirt, and also this was the closing ceremony, Beijing closing ceremony, and it's signed by James Tompkins, who was a rower and flag bearer for the team. Rowers have been traditionally done so much for Australian sport. They're up amongst the echelon of athletes, and you're going to be up there with them, kid. You're going to be up there with them. Let's see where we were. Scott was the winner. He too was completely devastated by what happened in Athens. He was in the best shape of his life, always had success at the highest level, international competition, both when he went to the World Championships as a junior and again in the under-23s. He was the highest ranked prognostic boat in the Australian team leading into Athens, which is generally a good guide to say at least you'll get a medal. They won the lead-up regatta, which I've said already. I'll just skip that bit. And he finished up with nothing. Ooh. All right, then I said he was shattered. He was shattered, and I only started to understand, So Rhett says here that Scott was shattered And I only started to understand the depth of his hurt after I gave him that little note in the boat shed 40 minutes before the race and just 5 minutes before he put his hands on the boat to go down to water. He was quite emotional and teared up. He had to go back to the shed. A little note? I hadn't heard about any little note. Mate, what's this note? Oh, didn't I show you? I got a letter when I arrived in the village from Burjo. Great letter. It also had an old beer coaster in it from Athens with a message for Scott. Who's Burjo? What was on the Athens beer coaster? I pressed. Rhett replied, Burjo, Simon Burgess, was the Australian rowing captain in Athens. And this letter was posted on the 28th of July 2008, just 11 days before the opening ceremony on the 8th of the 8th, 2008. It was addressed, Rhett Aleph, the coach of the Double Sculls in Beijing. He gave it to me to read. This is what the letter said. Hey Rhett, all the best mate. It must be incredible over there. I've thought about you guys and rowing every day. It is the ultimate experience, and in some ways more real than life, as you put every bit of energy into it for one chance to be called the best in the world. If only we put that much energy into everything we do. Anyway, Scott, Diesel and myself were into the Scotch on the last night in Athens before we flew home. Don't you start drinking alcohol, young lady. We were reflecting on Scott's experience and mine, and I must have fired him up a bit. He went on, got a pen and a beer coaster, and wrote this down on the back of the coaster for me. This was his promise to me. I've carried this beer coaster in my wallet for 4 years. If you feel the urge to pass it on to him, please do. I expect him to live up to it. Tell him to remember the intent behind this, as he was very serious when he handed this beer coaster over and asked me to look after it for him. And then he said, I'm looking forward to a debrief when you get home. Cheers, mate. Burjo. What was on the coaster? My inquisitiveness could hold no bounds. Come on, Rhett, what's on the coaster? All in good time, Larry. We can't put the cart before the horse. You need to understand how these young men complement each other and what they did to overcome their weaknesses. And this could be a story for you and your partner. What are you going to do in the next couple of years for Paris to become good enough to be on the dais? Something that your mother and father could never do at the Olympic Games. What are you going to do? Hurry up, tell me. All in good time. Scott was smart and a student of rowing. He took charge of all the technical side of the row. Sure, I as the coach was there, but Scott was in the boat talking to Craws, giving instructions, perfecting technique. He would bark instructions to David. Sit up straight, clean blade, push from the foot, not the toe, right long, smooth, don't muscle, keep pressure on the blade. So Brennan was your assistant coach? I queried. He sure was, and a good one. Day by day, their technique improved. But I still had one major worry. What was that? Crawshay was so far advanced aerobically that I worried that when the chips were down and we required that extra second effort, Scott would be wanting and not be able to lift. He had the technique, but he didn't have the physiology that Crawshay had. And I expressed this concern to Scott. I told him the simple facts about his partner's physiology. I shared that Crawshay in the gym could pull 410 watts on an ergo with a blood lactate of 4 millimoles. And no one else that we knew could do that. No one. So, what was Scott's reaction, I asked. He was amazed and impressed. And he vowed to me, this is the coach talking, he vowed he'd get stronger and he'd work on both his aerobic and anaerobic thresholds, his systems. He said he'd also take action to help both he and Craws to improve technically. So he wanted to really be a technical perfection for rowing, but he needed to get his body right both aerobically and anaerobically. I felt a bit like one of my learn to swim students. Sorry, he went on. Scott went out and bought this is interesting. Scott went out and bought a stationary bike. This is Brennan, in an effort to build his aerobic capacity. He placed this bike beside his computer. And every night, listen to this, every night at 11 o'clock, when he shut up his medical studies on the computer, he'd get up, take 2 steps left, and get onto the bike. Amazing. And get onto the bike. And hammer himself for an hour before dropping into bed, exhausted but happy. I was amazed. I was beginning to understand the importance on doing the little extra things, of making sacrifices if you want international success. Scott Brennan recognised and admitted that his physiological inadequacies, not reading too well, and decided that he was not going to be a weak link in the pair. Every night he went about building his cardiovascular capacity so that when David Crawshay called for that extra effort at the 1,000 metre mark, halfway, he would be able to respond. He would not let his mate down. Scott Brennan was preparing for gold, as was David Crawshay. As for Craws, I spoke with him about his great physiology, which served him well in Australia. However, I pointed out that it was not enough in international competition. He had technical rowing inadequacies. And if he wanted success overseas, he needed to become technically better, and he did. But I wanted to know about the Athens beer coaster. I bet you want to know about the Athens beer coaster too. Tell me about it. I was back in the moment. All in good time. Did I tell you about naming the boat? No, come on, tell me, but I really want to hear about the beer coaster. I was all ears, but the beer coaster intrigued me. Well, when the boys were asked to name their boat, they decided on the name Shineus. Why Shineus? Laurie, Shineus was the place of their biggest disappointment in Athens. Lake Shineus, was where they were beaten. So, the name of the boat, became a reminder of their disappointment and a motivator to work hard, I said. More than that, they actually made a point, listen to this, they made a point that every time they went to the lake, they would put their hand on the name Shineus. Think about the bitter defeat that they'd lived with. Wait 5 seconds with their hand on the name and make a vow that they would not waste a valuable training session, either technically or in the quality of effort. How's that? What about you? Are you prepared to do this sort of stuff? Are you prepared to think about it every time you go out to train, about your technique and your effort? Yeah, it was a reminder that the team must not only put in their physical effort if they wanted victory, but they must concentrate on technique, the rhythm, the teamwork to make their boat skim and make them unbeatable. David Crawshay now understood that great physiology was not enough to be a winner. He needed to be technically better. Yes, he understood this, and Scotty was like a dog with a bone. He wouldn't let him forget the importance of improving their technique. Scotty hounded Craws in the boat, and day after day until the boat was at one with both men, and it was skimming along the top of the water. Their technique became poetry in motion. Can you make your technique, you two girls, you two women, poetry in motion? Was Scott pushing Craws, I asked? Scott certainly wanted technical results. He was the driver. You have to understand that Scotty Brennan is a perfectionist. He did medicine the same year that he won Olympic gold medal. He knows how to be the best at what he does, whether it's medicine, rowing, speech, relationships. He analyses and identifies patterns that bring success. Scott was relentless in improving their skills. He pushed David day by day, stroke by stroke, session by session, 14 sessions a week, insisting on perfection. But I asked, what about the beer coaster? I wanted to know. I was like a dog with a bone after this. I want to find out about the beer. Later on, Laurie, did I tell you during the Olympic training period, I took the boys on a couple of training camps? Who with? Drew Ginn and Duncan Free during their Olympic preparation. Why? Noel Donaldson, who'd coached the awesome foursome, was there with Chris O'Brien, the National High Performance Director. No, you didn't tell me about that, about your training camps. But I want to hear about the beer coaster. Well, Noel's a winner. As you know, he had unbelievable success with the awesome foursome, now the best crew in the world in camp. He paused for a minute and I thought, if we had a couple of camps with Drew Ginn and Duncan Free, then my boys, Crawshay and Brennan, would learn a lot from their professionalism and the way they pay meticulous attention to detail. I'll say it again. The way they pay meticulous attention to detail. You want to be successful? Think about it. They were able to benchmark themselves against the best team in the world. You watch and you learn. I watched and learned, and he said to me, I watched and learned as well. We wanted to leave no stone unturned in our quest for Olympic gold, he concluded. That's the same thing I used to do with the mother. No stone unturned. Do everything properly. Then I butted in the story. Must be time to tell me about the beer coaster. All in good time, he teased and went on. One last thing you'll be interested in. Okay, I was resigned that he would reveal the information in his own good time. Laurie, Scotty's a smart bloke, and 2 days before the final, he went and spoke to Drew Ginn, that is, because if there's anyone in an Australian team who knows how to win, it's Drew Ginn. You know his results. They are amazing. They are amazing. He's won Olympic gold with a bad back. He flew home from one of the Olympics lying on the floor of the plane. He couldn't sit up, his back was so bad, after he'd won Olympic gold. Why did he go and see Drew, I asked. He was looking for advice, any little tip that might be the difference between winning and losing. What advice did he get? The two things he really cottoned on to from Drew were, 1, when you're sitting on the start line in rowing, you can be sitting there for up to 5 minutes, so quite a while. Lift up the nose cone as you push in. You may sit there for another 2 minutes. You spend a lot of time sitting and waiting. You need a flag to make sure that get the first part of the race right. Drew's flag was, when the red light comes on, you're on. It's full attention now. Full attention. You're in the starter's hands. Sit up tall. Get ready. And commit to the first 1,000 metres. The first 1,000 metres. We'd spoken about this, but when it's reinforced by a triple Olympic gold medalist and multiple world rowing champion, it gives the coach's instructions extra weight and meaning. And secondly, 2, at some stage, now listen to this is good. At some stage in the race, most likely at the 1,000, everyone gets asked the question, do you want this? And why do you want this? And do you deserve this? They're the critical questions. I'll say again for you, because you need to understand this. Do you want this? And why do you want this? And do you deserve this? In other words, have you been honest with your training? Have you been honest in your journey to Paris? I want to write another story, another book after Paris, and include you in as a chapter. But if you don't pay the price, you won't be there. At some critical moments in the race, everyone's going to be asked the question, and the ones that win are the ones that answer the question the right way. Do you want this? Yes. Why do you want it? Because I deserve it. Do you deserve it? Yes, I've done the work. You need something that will make you lift and respond. The boys decided it had to be an emotional response. It had to be something that would help give them that little extra, something emotional. They decided 2 days before the race that at the 1,000 metre mark, the halfway point, their flag, their emotional response would be the word justice. They felt so strongly that they should have won gold in the quad in 2004, it would be justice for them to win here. But I'll tell you something, it's only justice if you've done the work to win. When they shared this information, they were so emotional about it. The defeat 4 years earlier had left some real emotional scars, and they really got worked up about it. I hadn't realised as a coach until that time the depth of their pain. The pain of a hard workout stops immediately, the training session stops. But the pain of defeat lasts a lifetime. Do your training sessions hard. Don't leave anything in the boat. When they shared this information, they were emotional. The psychology of coaching is still not fully understood. I observed and then went on. Did the beer coaster that Burjo had in his wallet for 4 years play any part? Tell me about the beer coaster. Yes, it was a big emotional response, said Rhett. Well, share it, please, I said hopefully, and added, when did you share this beer coaster and the contents to Scott, I decided the best place to share it was in the boat shed before they went out to race, just before they went out. This would be my Trump motivation card. Ha ha ha, my Trump motivation card. Yes. Oh, I've lost the place here. I smiled and I thought of different things that I'd conjured up at different swimming meets to motivate my swimmers, including your mother. Rhett went on. First, I read the letter from Burjo to the boys, then gave Scott the beer coaster that had been tucked away in Burjo's wallet for 4 years, one Olympian. The same beer coaster he'd written on that night they were drinking scotch in that Athens pub. It read, "Do I want an Olympic gold medal? When I line up for the next Olympics, I'm not there to win. I'm there to wipe the floor. I am going to be so well prepared." The answer is yes. Then Scotty Brennan started to tear up. He became quite emotional. He had to go to the back of the boat shed, trying to deal with a lot of that emotional energy. What about you as a coach? I asked him, what did you think? Honestly, as a coach, I crapped myself. I thought, what am I thinking? I've stuffed up their whole 4-year cycle at the last minute. What happened when he came out? I gave them their last chat, emphasised that Drew had shared, the work they'd done in the preparation, the importance of the word justice, and more importantly, trusting each other. Scotty, you trust Craws. Craws, you trust Scotty. Scotty's there for you. Get into your own space and control your own personal area. Each one. Be a team, but look after your own space. Then they stopped. They stared into space for a minute or two before continuing. You know, there's a lot of negative vibes that they used and harnessed in their preparation. And I, as a coach, never realised it until I tapped into it at this regatta. My simple advice to them as they put their hands... Oh, this is great. My simple advice to them as they put their hands on the name Shinius and picked the boat up was, kill the demon and get it out of your system by being successful. How good's that? I said, Rhett, that's a fantastic story. But before you go, I need to know what you brought to the table as a coach. Because you seem to be saying how much your program was driven by 2 great athletes. This is what he answered simply. I brought enthusiasm, belief, resources, such as physio, doctor, strength and conditioning coach, sports psychologist, knowledge, and more importantly, I brought no ego. I, as a coach, was willing to learn on this journey. And that's where I turned the tape recorder off, wondering how many coaches out there bring no ego into their relationship. It's history how these 2 men in Beijing were Olympic gold medalists. I'd love to go to Paris. I'd love to go to Paris, meet your mother and father there, and see an Olympic gold medal go around your neck and your partner's neck. Have a great adventure training for the Paris Olympics. Good luck, love. Merry Christmas.